there, it's Polly here, coming to you from weird exotic locations. This is actually Bali, with me, Mr. Toots, my eternal travelling companion and bestest bud, and wargamer extraordinaire. Anyway, I've come here to do some cool reviews for you guys, and woohoo, what have I found? I have actually found a set of Ancients rules that I really like. Some viewers had asked me about my recommendations for Ancients rules, and I was like, I haven't think, because there's been a few out recently. They've either been very simple, they've been massively over complex. These ones hit the magic sweet spot. French written, Art de Le Guerre. It is by French wargamers. Where are they? Onyx Editions. Now you can find lots of stockists for this in the UK, USA, Australia and so on, so don't worry. But Art de Le Guerre. Now, a fairly hefty volume, but most of this is actually really well done army lists. The rules are blessed in their simplicity, in their clarity, and in their desire to avoid the nonsense, non-period, non-ancient warfare flavoured niggly gamesplay that has come in from some older sets of rules, which we all know so well. Yes, we're going to do some edition bashing here. DBM, De Bellis Multitudinous, for those who didn't know, was an ubiquitous set of Ancients rules that really kind of ruled the roost for a long time. And they left their scars, and I can see the scars that they've left in this set of rules, because this set of rules is kind of designed to be the things that DBM promised to be and didn't deliver. This thing delivers. What it's wanted to do from the outset is common sense. No weird rules lawyership tricks that make essentially a non-historical game but allow you to somehow gain tactical advantage by doing ridiculous positioning, stupid micromanagement, or just quoting ridiculous rules regulations that somehow mean you're immune to attack. All gone. But it's kept a very simple, clear, crisp and playable combat system, victory resolution system, etc. So it is a game that runs off D6. It is an element-based war game. So for those of you who don't know what that is, instead of individual figures that are removed as you get casualties, troops are based in elements. You get a base that has a set number of miniatures fixed to it, and that base operates as a particular troop type with a particular tactical style and particular equipment and training that sets it apart. These units will take damage to their morale, and casualties and these sorts of things are represented as morale loss and disruption of the unit. When this gets too high, depending on the quality of the unit, it will scatter and it will rout off the board and is lost in play. So, element games. There's a points system where elements, not elephants, well, elephants can be elements, are purchased. So these traditional aspects, are all in there. Now, so game setup, very easy. The game is, you have a table, it's divided into sectors. You determine which one of you is the defender, which one of you is the attacker. The defender picks from terrain that's suitable to his army. There's a list of different basic terrain types, and there will be a compulsory terrain piece which the defender has to place. So your guys are hill tribes, there'll be a hill there, or your guys from hill tribes that adjudicate desert, but you also spend a lot of time fighting in river country. All right, you might be able to choose a water obstacle or a hill or sands or what have you. Fantastic. And then you take turns placing different bits of terrain. You can move them about. Very simple. It's not competitive. Again, it's designed to get a board set up that will be fun to play on. Well done. Now, there's some nice surprises in the way the troops are defined. Again, the traditional kind of Wargames Research Group rules way back in the day had their way of defining troops. These guys have got a slightly different route. So infantry wise, we have light infantry, which are skirmishers who fire from a distance to harass enemy troops. Now, these troops can cause casualties, and they're very good at slowing people down, but if charged and they're in the open, they have to evade, because if they are contacted by heavy units or cavalry, they are just wiped out. No dice rolled, nothing. They're just gone. Exactly true. So if you're in danger from cavalry or whatever, you're going to have to get into cover, and if you get close in to heavy units to harass them, you've got to give yourself space to evade back if they try and charge you and shoo you off. If you're caught up against obstacles, or if you're caught with troops kind of blocking your route of escape, then you're screwed. But they are very, very, very difficult to get rid of, because they do keep evading, and they're just pests, which is what they're designed to be. There is light medium infantry, which is very loose order troops who, again, harass from a distance. They do not tend to close and destroy. They further divide these into missile-based troops, usually with bows, but can have crossbows or slings or whatever. And these represent particularly a lot of kind of tribal infantry that they're not kind of in a dense formation or highly organized formation, but they are, again, they're way more packed than skirmishers. But again, these guys are fast, they can evade. They've also got javelinmen in this category, and that is things like peltasts and so on, who again harass from a distance, but are quite willing to dash in and try and destroy skirmishers and chase them off. So, good. Medium infantry. These are troops who are in a denser formation, but still not kind of shoulder to shoulder pack like heavy infantry, Roman legionaries, pikemen, that sort of thing. So this is more like your Celtic, British, tribal infantry and so on. They're fast moving. They are a looser formation, allows them to kind of move through some terrain more easily. This can represent some things like tighter packed missile troops, like say Indian longbowmen or British longbowmen, but it can also be like a lot of tribal infantry who are closing to contact. These are further defined by some of the defining traits which we get later on. Heavy infantry, these are guys who are close packed and designed to close and destroy in melee. That's what they do. Cavalry, obviously we've got light horse, we've got medium horse, who are not well protected but are still fighting often in a looser formation. So again, they're quite good for chasing off light cavalry and so on. They're not as good at standing up in line of battle against, say, heavies, but they can evade and so on. And heavy cavalry, so that medium cavalry might be a lot of Mongol or Hunnic tribal cavalry. And their nobles would be the shock cavalry, heavy cavalry, which is armoured. Good. But there's also cataphracts, which are very densely packed, heavily armoured guys, shoulder to shoulder, fight with the old 12-foot kontos, a two-handed weapon that is literally fenced with but shoved. So these guys are a slow-moving battering ram. There are, for frenzied frontal attack, there are honest-to-God knights who tend to be heavily armoured, complete Guniguhu psychopaths, very do or die. Okay. There's also war wagons and chariots and artillery and elephants, etc., etc. You can further break down the definitions of these troops. Quality, they can be mediocre, they can be average, or they can be elite. But training and weapons and so on and style give them some extra traits. So some units can be impetuous, which means they tend to rage forward into combat, but they're very ferocious when they hit. There are also kind of ferociously charging troops, who have an additional bonus for their psychotic, front-end attacks. Armor comes into things. Units can be armored or heavily armored. So if you've got heavy infantry, and foot knights are like a sort of a separate category of heavy infantry, but they will be heavily armored. Roman legionaries will be armored. So cataphracts, heavily armored. This helps defend you against missile damage, but also helps you in combat. So you also get further definition for some troop types based on weapon and style. So heavy infantry, you could be swordsman, you could be spearsman, you could be pikeman. Pikemen and cataphracts, because they are in such densely packed formations, they are difficult to maneuver. So they're quite powerful, but they're hard to maneuver because of their nature. So swift about turns and very swift movements take you a lot more to organize. So it's a nice definition system. I want to do crazed Celtic fanatics. All right, well, let me say that my tribesmen are medium infantry with a impetuous grade. My bodyguard, or my naked fanatics, they are going to be medium infantry with a fanatical charge, and they might be elite. They have a higher morale. My Roman infantry, these are swordsmen, but I'm adding an impact ability because there's a trait impact, which is heavy throwing weapons delivered just before contact. Great. Pillar, Franciscans, this sort of stuff. So my guys are heavy infantry swordsmen with impact. I was also very pleased to see that Roman legionaries are not just sort of absolute meat before Crazed Warband the way they were in DBM. No, you can get an actual fight, Romans against Gauls and so on, and the legionaries actually get to fight. So it's a very nice way of defining. You can define everything. All your pikes, you can take some units and intermix, so you can have a missile unit that has a front layer of, say, swordsmen or long spearsmen or halberdiers, and this gives it some close combat ability. Or you can have a close combat unit that has some integral missile power, like, say, late Roman infantry that have bows at the back, or Byzantine infantry and so on. So they become a heavy infantry unit that gets some minor missile support, largely useful for helping to break up attacks that are coming in. Fantastic. It's all in there, and it's all well done. And the tactics are there. Your light infantry can shoot. Your light cavalry can actually shoot at a distance. They have to evade charges to stay alive. So, great. We're back to actual period tactics. You can screen units with light infantry. They can evade back through your troops, once they're being chased off, etc. Lovely. Good to have the tactics back, and that's part of the fun of this. Armies are divided, as they were, into wings. So you get a center and a left and right wing. Your commander will usually have the center, doesn't have to, but usually will. And they bring in different command styles. Your army lists will have the organization level of the army, which is based on how good its staff is, how well it's organized, whether it had particularly brilliant military commanders, etc. You use those points to pick the value of your general and his one or more lieutenants. So armies with great staff and great organization get great lieutenants. However, there are some surprises, or not really surprises. So things like some of the Roman Republican armies, well organized and some, but because they generally would have two generals that would command on different days and who therefore bitterly fought against each other, a level of disruption in that means that this army is not as well organized as it could be. I love it. When it is time to actually play, the initiative, whoever's got the initiative will be the first moving player, but then it alternates. You move. All movement distances are done in UDs, units of distance, which is one base width. I love that. It's always very crisp and clean and easy to do. So what you get is you have to move one entire command, complete everything for that command, and then move on to the next. Now, your command, you've got command points, which comes from the quality of the general plus values generated by a dice roll. And here's where the difference in command style comes in. A lot of the regular armies, the traits of those troops, they tend to be regular and quite ordered. So you spend points to send them in, and maneuvering them is relatively cheap. for very ferocious, impetuous, frenzied armies, you're actually going to be spending points to stop these guys going in. Otherwise, if you do nothing, they will find a target all by themselves and go for it, which may be exactly what you want. But essentially, your command style there is like holding these guys back, let them go. Which, yeah, has a great feel to it in its own way. And there are different zones. So if you're well outside of enemy influence, relatively cheap to maneuver troops, and you can maneuver troops more than once, so you get extra kind of movement for shifting things along. As you get into effectively longbow shot, you can't do the multiple moves. It starts to cost you more points to do intricate maneuvers, all the about faces and so on. And then there's inside someone's zone of control. Things extend a zone out in front of them of one base width. Now, when troops enter that, the first zone of control that a base enters into, that becomes that unit's essentially priority target. That is the unit that is most dangerous to it. And this is very important because it removes a lot of the idiotic bastardry that we saw in DBM and the non-period tactics. So anyway, once you get into that close range, it's very difficult to do anything other than move straight in, or if you're troops that can evade, move straight out. But intricate maneuvers across people's fronts, no. Now we're going to do some more addition bashing. DBM. What I saw time and time again was people's armies just lined up in long contiguous lines, because it was all about having flank support. So you never had separate wings running off and doing things. You just stayed shoulder to shoulder and you just moved towards each other. But then when a clash of lines came, it devolved into this niggly thing where you had units individually moving very freely, because it's cheap to do, to wrap around other units. And so it was this weird kind of in Air War Games terms, it's the furball, with everything's like circling around each other in this ridiculous non-period style. It's like, why yes, the Battle of Zama was fought exactly that way, you idiot. Not in this. So that system where you've identified the priority target for a unit, so say you've got 3 units coming in at an angle, and the middle one encounters that first zone, that unit is now allowed to square up against its opponent. But if you wanted to somehow sort of shift this across and make it so you had 3 guys perfectly lined up against 3 guys, that might not work. If the first one that you encountered was sort of the chap on the end, then your middle unit will line up against that, then your guy that was on your flank lines up against the next one. So it keeps the coherence between the troops and stops all that ridiculous furball stuff. Units are moving, acting more like units. If you're wanting to attack flanks and rear, then you have to have set up for it. You have to have begun the move outside of his frontal zone. That's the only way to do it. There's some other nice little minor things. You're allowed to like do sideward slides of one base width with units before you move, so you can kind of slide away from different bits of terrain that might be in the way and so on. So it's a very nice, very clear movement system, but that highlighting of your priority targets really fixes all those strange, niggly, side attack, ridiculous, swirling furballs that you got in DBM, and most of the kills in DBM were from units being driven back against guys that were for some reason standing sideways to them, which made them impenetrable, which meant that you died rather than got pushed back. None of that. Combat and shooting is great. It is a opponented system. You will both roll a d6 and you got some bonuses to the dice. Highest roll wins. There's not 400 million things to memorize off charts. Your troop type, it will tell you that essentially the default is you get no change to your dice roll. It's as rolled. There will be tactical bonuses, particularly in melee, for being uphill of the guy, these sorts of things, having a general attached. For shooting, having additional shooters helping you fire that's a dice add, and having a unit on your flanks doing flank support for you, that gives you a bonus. But the troop type description will give you other bonuses. So it will say heavy infantry gets a +1 against everybody, but against this certain type of troop, this rises to a +2, but it drops to 0 against these guys. Pikes gain an extra +1 against these particular enemies. So, it's very nicely done. You roll with these pretty simple adds. So again, you don't have to memorize 101 different troop types against 101 different troop types. There it all is, and there's a cheat sheet included. The highest score has won that melee. The differential between the dice will give you the results. There is a little chart for this, but it's simple. There's only about 3 entries to it, so easy to remember. Basically, if you beat him by 1 or 2, he'll take some morale damage. If you beat him by 3 or 4, he takes a ton of morale damage. 5 or 6, the unit is destroyed. Some units can elect to do a breakthrough move, a pursuit move, if they've destroyed an opponent. Impetuous troops and fanatics and so on just do a breakthrough move. You randomize some extra movement. If there are other enemies kind of to their front, they will advance into them. If you contact them, then that sets up a whole new melee for the next bound. So kind of exciting. Yahoo! You get to bust through and beat up on the next line. If there's no one else, these guys will turn to face units to their side and start trying to claw a hole for everyone else to go through. So it's got a really nice feel. Yeah, lots of little minor things that just bring the tactics of the period out. Elephants, of course. Elephants are frightening. Well, mine isn't, but he's kind of special. Oh, well, all right, sometimes you're frightening. But when an elephant unit is routed, it rampages. So you randomize the direction. It might rampage deeper into the enemy troops and cause disruption amongst them, or it could go to the flanks or back. But massed shoulder-to-shoulder elephants, which you can see in so many other ancient games, and when you read up the sources, it says they didn't do that. There are, particularly if you read like Thai and Indian sources, there are many different ways of deploying elephants, but massive shoulder-to-shoulder serried ranks of the things, tends not to be. They tend to be spaced out more. That's because of this, rampages. Different styles of war wagons, some designed to hold off elephants, actually, all this stuff, they're all in there. It really does bring the flavor back. Your skirmishers shooting, because they're bringing their zones of control in close to people, it's wrecking the way they can move. They then get charged and scatter back and evade, so you're using these guys to pin down and wreck the other guy's maneuver and stop him from doing the big long redeployments, because you've got some light cavalry in the area, which means he's within 5 or 6 base widths of you, which means he can no longer do all the extra movements, and all his maneuver is now more expensive because he's been harassed. Actual tactics are back. That dice roll system, it's simple but nuanced, easy to do, but it really brings out the flavor of the troops. So, my Roman legionaries, heavy infantry, armored, impact, what's coming at them. I've got Gallic fanatics. These are elite impact medium infantry foaming down. Oh, what's that like? Well, these guys actually take a fair bit to make them back off. However, they are going to be coming straight at you. You might be able to get some Siloy out there to, disrupt them a little bit and then withdraw them back through your legionaries. And then, shoulder to shoulder, fist in the back of the line front. Frater, idem, I'm here, brother. And, it has the feel. The cavalry, they charge. The cataphracts blunder forward because they are unmaneuverable but sort of unstoppable. Same with pikes, unmaneuverable but very hard to stop. Grind, boom, boom. This is a terrific set of rules. They are easy to teach, very, very, very thoroughly illustrated with. They lay out the rules and it's well done. Each section, they tell you what they're going to tell you. Then they tell you, and then they use illustrations to show you exactly what they've just told you. Here are all the slightly more difficult ways that you might be confronted, like half a dozen different groups kind of smashed together at different angles. Given what we've just shown you, here's how that very easily sorts out. So very, very clear, very, very crisp. It's got an immense amount of flavour to it, an immense amount of fun to it. The tactics are all there. I'm not seeing scope for rules lawyers to make people's lives miserable, because the actual combat rules are simple and run off, just basic tactics. I'm uphill of this guy, this will be great. I've got pikes and he's coming at me with cavalry. This will be fun. A great set of rules. These would be absolutely my recommended set. Art de Le Guerre. Look them up online. Onyx Edition's website has a list of all of their local suppliers. So it was a hard one to track down initially, but it's once I figured out where to find it, easy enough. They're very popular now as tournament rules and so on in England. I can see why. Everyone has kind of joyously brought out the armies that they had for DBM until eventually the PTSD really sunk in and all they could do is sit in a dark room rocking back and forth. But no, the joy is back, I think, is what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. And I looked up people's game reports from conventions and it seemed joyous again, which is what the damn hobby's supposed to be. It's games, it's for fun, and in Ancients, a big part of it I always thought was, the love of the period and the spectacle of the period, and particularly the flavour of the troops. I want Republican Romans. Why? Because I want my maniples in their square formations. I want them switching back and forth through each other. I want very little cavalry and most of it's crap, but I want these cool infantry, and I want the Tritari holding the back. And I want my nicely organised army with generals who bitterly hate each other. You get that feel. I want my Mongol hordes. They're all in there. There's extra resources for online, but actually the army lists inside this main rulebook are very, very extensive. I can't see you really wanting any more. You want Italian, Villanovan hill tribes. You want you want the third dynasties of you want Hittites, you want Lagash, you're very, very interested in the Singnu or whatever. They're all in there. These at the moment would be my recommended Ancients rules for players. Easy to learn, easy to pick up, easy to bring new players in, which is what the hobby has to do. We have to recruit more players. It can't just be 60-year-old guys. I started as this enthusiastic teenager and so on, and I want to see those people brought back in. There's a reason why fantasy gaming kind of took them away from historical gaming, and mostly it was because the kind of rules that became standard for historical gaming were so desperately niggly and pointless and full of rules lawyership that the kids just couldn't, not even that they couldn't compete, they just couldn't join in. I think these rules are ones they can join in. So, get your younger friends in and play. Hey, have you ever considered New Kingdom Egyptian? The first chariot's free. Anyway, take a look at these. Highly, highly, highly recommended. Great work. And thankfully the rainstorms here have finished. It's about 99% humidity and about 40 degrees, but what the hell, I was born to this. I will see you guys later on. From me and the dancing elephant. Farewell till next time. Bye.